Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hagdeal Gaming's Stat Chat. Strat Chat.
Insert title here.
Insert title here.
Hit
Crunch
pointers.
Corner. Strange Patterns.
Ooh, that's a good one for me.
Hagdeal Gaming has just released the first episode of our first show, Queen of Daggers, Heart of Fire, the very first week of release of the Daggerheart system.
Yeah.
And Katie, who plays Evelyn Ravenwood on the show, and me, Asteria, game mistress, are here to talk about system stuff, about Daggerheart and what it's like to roll them dice. Katie and I met when we were both doing a couple of episodes, when Katie was a guest player performer on The Stranger by Roll for Impact. But you can hear her on a lot of other podcasts, including Dark Nexus, where she's been playing Pathfinder 1E.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
1E.
The hardcore. Yeah, so we kind of want to talk about
Crunch.
What it was like learning and implementing the system.
Yeah.
As we went. And reminder to listeners, we started recording in November. We were going off the 1.5 plus playtest rules.
That's
right. We had 2 session zeros. Rule changes were announced after our second session zero. Just in time to get rid of action tokens, which I was very happy about. Surprise, Katie. J-Ben appeared. A wild J-Ben appears. So, and we've just been joined by J-Ben, who plays Lemma in Queen of Daggers, Heart of Fire. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing good.
We're here to talk about the nerd shit.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about mechanics. So, J-Ben is the person I have played TTRPGs with the longest of the group. He and I have played for years, 4E, 5E, and Pugmire, which is like a very based on 5E, and he is very system-minded and crunch-minded as well. So, okay.
Don't argue.
Yeah, I think.
Were you going to argue, J-Ben? Should I drop the spreadsheets?
I think what we have this in common, where we're both theater people by extraction.
Yeah.
And we sort of, I tend to initially enter a character because of a vibe or a funny voice, and then realities at play, and I'm like, great, how do I optimize? It's just this. It is a duality. Duality bites.
Oh, yes.
Of on the one hand, the thing that brings the theater and the storytelling, and then there's this slightly compulsive tendency that drives some of my decision making.
Did we talk about on air the spreadsheet that you created to determine whether it was better to take, what was it, to add to your defense, or I can't remember now, it was so long ago, but it was should I raise evasion or should I raise? That was amazing. And it validated what I had already done, which I appreciated that.
Okay, this is the kind of thing that we're supposed to be talking about.
Yes.
So why don't we talk about Daggerheart character generation, and what we think about the mechanics of character generation and leveling up, because I think that's really part of it.
This was interesting because like J-Ben, I go in for a voice or a vibe or whatever, and then try to figure out what in the rules will help realize that. And then once we get in it, when we start leveling, it's like, well, okay, what is the best possible choice that I can make for this character in this campaign? This was fun too because Lemma and I share a school. Lemma and Evan share a school, so we're just every time we level, we discuss some choices about who's going to take what and what is more appropriate to which character, which I enjoyed greatly.
Let's talk
And
about
I,
the
There's a little
domains.
bit of
yeah,
like, oh no, I couldn't possibly. You take this one,
yes, I
please, and
know we
that's
had a
it.
lot of that at the beginning. And then I was finally like, look, I really want this one thing,
Well, and
and somebody should have this.
the two of you are great, like as players and as characters, are a great example of the use of domains, because Evelyn is a wizard
A
and
wizard,
Lemma
yeah.
is a bard, and I think I think the three of us are very similar as players. You know,
Hmm.
distinct but similar, uh, and you know, your both of your characters are very, I'd say, wizardly in the traditional sense, but the the domain mechanics really help you these characters dovetail but not
Yeah.
uh you know repeat.
Hmm.
You know, one of the, I think, for certainly for 5e players, and I think this is the whole history of D&D and a lot of similar
Well, I'll tell you.
uh it was such a surprise for me to see wizards have heal
Hmm.
powers. Wizards can heal, and bards cannot, I believe, and only some druids can.
Hmm.
Uh, but
I think I get to heal stress.
wizards,
Right.
but
Which makes sense.
wizards
Art heals
have
stress.
the. You both share, both the bards and the wizards share what Daggerheart calls codex, which in
Book learning.
yeah, what Dungeons and Dragons
Good old
folks
book
would
learning.
think of as arcana, but arcana is something. Arcana is the opposite in Daggerheart.
Yeah.
Basically, arcana is innate spellcasting ability, and so Evelyn and Lemma both are book studiers for their magic, and we meet them in the library as such. But wizards also have splendor, which is
Bit of a
sort
divine spark
yeah, a
almost. Yeah.
divine light in a godless
Yeah.
magic system.
Yeah.
Uh,
I look at it like this sort of like a hopeful wanting to community based, wanting to
yeah,
help other people kind of magic.
and is grace the other
Yeah, I
domain
think
for
it's
bards?
very like white coated in the Magic the Gathering sense.
Okay, I
Hmm.
was
Yeah,
wondering.
that's
Right.
right.
Splendor, that is.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
Healing and
Grace.
boosting.
Grace is the other. Uh, yeah, yeah.
Which is
Grace, the other
basically charisma,
bard.
is flair,
Domain.
right?
Yeah,
Rogues have
poise. But I do think Grace, Grace sort of, as you say, I think the domains are really elegant for expressing the sort of dualities of a character. And so I think for Lemma, the idea that he's in some way grounded in his physical body, and deftness is a fact of relates to the world. Feels really rooted in the grace domain. Although, yeah, to your point, Katie, I do think I skew a little bit more. I'm looking at the things that I've taken since, and it's skewing towards Codex.
And yet we have not overlapped.
So Jabin's spreadsheet is from a leveling up discussion we had. David, who plays Orlean, who we'll talk with soon. This is his first TTRPG experience ever, and he has been great at it and has been asking all the right questions. But when at one of the level ups, you know, came kind of one of the classic questions about, you know, prioritizing where you put your resources, and the Daggerheart leveling up system. The whole character gen and leveling system is designed to be less swingy, less unbalanced, to keep player characters more comparable to each other while still giving them enough room to be distinct. And so far, I think that's been very successful. And so leveling up has things you can do in tiers. So by the end of the tier, sort of everyone has made all of the choices, but at each level within the tier, you have to decide which you want to do. So I think, was it evasion
Armor.
versus hit points?
Yeah.
I've got it. I've
threshold,
got it
damage
somewhere.
threshold, damage
Damage
threshold
thresholds,
versus
yeah.
evasion.
Yeah.
Is it better to not get hit or to take less damage when you get hit? And Jabin made a spreadsheet.
A
Yeah,
remarkable
I did.
spreadsheet.
You know, I was like, well, that's the
Thank
classic
you.
question, and I don't think you could really go wrong. And in Daggerheart, you know,
J-Ben was like,
there are
actually.
death moves where you don't have to worry too much about like silly
Well,
girl.
what was interesting is I anticipated the opposite. Like, so the damage brackets, these thresholds in Daggerheart, are to me like maybe the crunchiest part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, it's a very intuitive system, like something that D&D doesn't have, which is a way of kind of evaluating. Oh, you got hit real hard. D&D just has the damage dice, which are they're very straightforward in a way.
Yeah.
But hit real hard for a wizard in D&D is different than hit real hard for a barbarian in D&D.
Right.
And I think this is a problem that specifically makes it hard to run D&D 5e, to be a dungeon master. And I truly believe that a lot of the design for Daggerheart is to make it easier to run so that more people, so
As
that
it
there
should
are
be.
more games,
Yeah.
so that more people feel able to pick it up and say, yeah, I'll GM this time, to make it require less prep and to feel less stressful to just wing it. And with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, none of us know anything about 2024, just so you know. Correct? Am I
Correct.
correct?
I don't. Let's speak for
Jabin didn't respond. He's already got spreadsheets.
I don't. About D&D
I'll let-
2024?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't even know what it was. I will let you finish your
Yeah.
sentence.
Is this
Jabin.
what used to be known as D&D 1? Or
Yes.
is yet to be known as? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's come out.
Has it?
But in 5e, and I don't know if this is true in 2024, one of the stressors is that it's very easy to accidentally kill low-level players. It's swingy that way. You know, and it's very easy for them to obliterate your big enemies because what you roll on the dice for damage, that's how much damage they get. And if someone gets an ill-timed crit, then they're gone. So it's very hard to plan encounters at low levels that are balanced. And at high levels, it's very hard to plan encounters that are challenging without being extremely long. And Daggerheart uses mechanics that they didn't necessarily invent, but they built upon mechanics that, you know, mitigate that. That, you know, there's only it's much harder for one attack to take you out completely. So, Jabin, you were saying spreadsheet. You were surprised.
Oh, yeah, I expected the damage thresholds to be more consequential than evasion, but the opposite was true. And actually, the better your evasion is, the less the damage thresholds matter. As your evasion gets higher, the optimization that you get from improving your damage thresholds decreases.
So the best strategy remains not getting hit.
Best strategy remains not getting hit. I think the trade-off
Well,
is that
second best strategy. The best strategy is killing the enemy.
Well, that also includes
right, not allowing them to
Yeah,
even.
right.
Yeah.
reducing the number of opportunities for someone to hit you is always the best strategy.
No, sorry. As I always say, the best strategy is not being an adventurer.
Yes, be an NPC. You will almost
Right.
never get
Stay
hit by a
home.
troll. Yeah.
Yeah. Stay tuned for episode 4 when we start a tavern.
Yeah. Live a boring life, friends.
Yeah. This is Stardew Valley, the game.
Exactly.
I had come to the same conclusion without a spreadsheet because I just don't like to get hit. But it was not. There was nothing to back it up until you.
I think the advantage to taking damage threshold improvements is that it probably flattens the bell curve. So it means you might get hit a little bit more often, but the damage that you take is going to be consistently in a certain bracket. So you can predict it a little bit more.
And I don't know how
Math.
it interacts with certain class features that
Yeah,
are
doesn't Jenny
unstoppable.
have something where it's good for her to get hit? Like not good, but like there's
I do not know the
yeah,
class features backwards and forwards.
yeah.
So
You can talk about that with Jenny since she's
yes,
a
Yeah.
get hit type of gal.
yeah, she is.
There isn't really like a barbarian archetype in
Mm-mm.
Daggerheart, unless
I think
it
the
is expressed through
stalwart
some of the domain.
guardian,
Hmm.
because the stalwart guardian has unstoppable, which is like rage.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it doesn't have quite the like the DPS that barbarians have.
Yeah.
It's warrior that I'm not sure about. Like warrior and guardian, the distinctions between uh, I'm not totally up on, and perhaps commenters can fill us in. And of course, they're now playtesting fighter,
Oh, just
which
straight up
is
fighter.
they're calling it fighter. The martial artist subclass is monk. You know, a monk
Yeah.
without the spiritual flavorings, and I forget what the other subclass is called. No, we already have uh, blade and bone. Fighter is bone and valor, and it's juggernaut. Oh yeah, juggernaut
Oh,
is the other class.
great name.
That's
Oh, speaking of Magic the
Oh,
Gathering.
fun.
so that sounds kind of barbarian-y, doesn't it? Class feature: I am the weapon. Well, you don't have any equipped weapons. Your evasion has a +1 bonus. Your unarmed strikes are considered a melee weapon. Use the trait of your choice and deal D10 plus your tier physical damage. Get combo strikes.
So are they adding new domains, or are they just permuting the domains they have in new ways?
They are adding a domain because the other class they are playtesting is Warlock, which is Grace and Dread.
Ooh.
That's so interesting.
No,
I
you
guess they
can't
kind of
start a new character, Jason.
no, no. But it's just interesting because
Well, if Lemma
the
happened
rogue
to die.
run Lemma,
Season 2,
yeah,
maybe. If you if you
Lemma
really screw
falls
it
into
up,
a cliff,
there'll be a Dread domain in Laguna.
Falls into a cliff.
falls into a cliff. Yeah.
Like Wile E. Coyote.
So yeah, exactly. Uh, but it's interesting because the rogue class as it exists in Daggerheart is a little bit warlocky.
Yeah, it's midnight.
Oh,
I
really?
thought the midnight domain was
Yeah.
pretty warlocky. Yeah.
I haven't been able to find a flavor text description of the Dread domain, uh, so I don't know that.
It'd be a fun little experiment to just be like, I'm gonna build a character by picking 2 domains and make up my own class. Like that's kind of there's
The,
certain
the
parameters
sub
for that. That's
the
kind of
subreddit has been at it.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice. I'll shift Evelyn into Necromancer at some point.
I mean, I think the domains are just one of the most evocative things about Daggerheart, and it
Yeah,
just seems
domains and
so
experiences.
like such a logical next step.
Can we talk a little bit about experiences? Because to me,
Yes.
that's my favorite part of the whole game.
I feel like you two, in particular, have had fun. No one more than
Jven
Katie.
has the best one.
Are you referring to
Oh,
Inscrutable?
I
right.
am.
The one
That
that
is the best one.
Yeah, so, and I actually don't think listeners to episode 1 will know about this yet
No, they will not
because
know
it
that
is
yet.
a later
Yeah.
edition.
I vomit all mine out like 5 minutes
Yeah.
into
But
my
I think
appearance, but
Well, not all of them. There's one you.
but I think what is cool about experiences is that is that they sort of allow you to respect the things that you learn about your character as you play. And so actually I've come maybe more into the experiences or aspects of my experiences that I learn about a couple episodes in than the ones that I came in with.
Yeah.
yeah. Agreed. Same. I like them
Yeah,
as
yeah. Yours is a great example of that too.
yeah, yeah. I like them as a sort of a puzzle piece of the replacement of skills as the
Mm,
slot on your character sheet. I like because like I get some of my skills I get from being loreborn, and some of my skills I get from my domain abilities. But to me, the experiences are the things that are like this is the core to who you are, and I don't think Jben will disagree with me when I say it's fun to attempt to apply your experiences to what's going on in the game to find that connection between I can find that for you and figuring this thing out.
Yeah.
Like that part is really really fun. But I think that they're all unique to us is what really helps us differentiate between how these characters approach the world and their curiosities about it and their things they're closed off to about it. I think that it really it's a much more imaginative way than just be like, I'm good at history. I'm
Yeah.
good at
yeah,
sneaking around, you know.
And I think
yeah,
GMs should be particularly open to players adjusting their experiences as they get to know their characters. You know,
Hmm.
as they're in a situation, they're like, no, wait, this is something
Yeah.
that my character is experienced with. Can I change that thing I wrote
Before I
in
knew who I
before
was.
I knew
Yeah.
who I was, or and like was maybe thinking very literally,
Yeah.
or in an optimizing frame of mind, was like, this is the situation where like my character would have an edge. Like
Yeah.
this is their element. They're in their element in this situation.
Those are the
Uh,
moments in gameplay that were really exciting to me.
yeah, and there's something uh, that really threads the needle perfectly with it. Like it's a real mechanic that is flavor.
Hmm.
You know, it is
Hmm.
perfectly both of them.
Yeah.
And I've seen people talk about the system, you know, on the subreddit online, and you know, I've seen people say, "Love the system, but I really want to do this specific thing, like a kind of crunchy thing."
Yeah.
And people say, "That's what experiences are
Yeah.
for. Like experiences
Go
is how
nuts,
you do
dude.
that."
Yeah.
And you know, that feels more satisfying than saying, "Well, you can just do that." Like in any
Yeah.
TTRPG, like you can play however you want.
Right.
Uh,
But it is more fun to be like, but I backed it up with this little piece of flavor and
yeah,
story that
yeah,
is unique to me. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah. I think a lot about Morrowind,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the CRPG. For those who may be
Those who are
under
not
the
as
age
old
of
as I am.
25 or so, yeah. Morrowind was a CRPG. It's the Elder Scrolls 3.
right,
Um,
okay.
I know some of you don't think the numbers even went that low, but the
I have played all of the
uh,
numbers.
wow, I have not played. Actually only played Morrowind,
Don't.
but the
Don't play the
the
other. Don't play the
fair.
earlier ones. They're so hard.
But I think that's a good example of a game where the joy of the game is kind of not at all in the gameplay offerings, like that you are given to do the abilities that your character gets.
Mm.
The joy of the game is the things that you invent
Mm.
and
Yeah.
the sort of story that you build around your character. And I think it's a really unique way to actually give those decisions some life in the mechanics of the game,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is pretty rare.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just can't stress enough that when you're playing any game with a simpler rule system, the more opportunities there are to differentiate your wizard from another wizard or whatever, that
Yeah.
that you can really buy into and personalize, that makes the game so much richer and the experience of playing so much more interesting.
And there's something about, you know, I know at least in D&D, they talk about the three pillars of the game. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Combat.
combat, role play, and exploration. Uh, and this is making me think of kind of a different kind of three pillars of what's on your sheet, what's in your mind, and what's happening between people at the
Mm.
table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think experiences really unite all three of those
Yeah,
pillars
that's right.
because you have it on your sheet and it makes you see
Interesting. Yeah.
what you want to do in your
It
mind.
illuminates a facet of your character that nothing else on your sheet can.
But I also really like the aspect of it's not defined, so you kind of have to pitch it,
Yeah, I
and you
like that
kind of
part
have
too.
to say uh, you and I see discourse again. I keep talking about what I see online, but I see people fret a bit over, oh, what if people to do too general an experience, that can be applied in too many places. And the usual response is, well, a GM can say no.
Yeah.
It's a conversation you have, and the implication is sort of in the character generation, uh, phase, which is very true. And all of this depends on who you are and what your table's like and what your goals are. But for me, as you guys know, and we are called Hag Deal Gaming. And we like a little
You like a good
negotiation.
bargain. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you tell so sometimes when you guys say, "Can my experience such and such apply here?" I go,
It's a stretch.
"Why would it? It's a
Yeah.
stretch, but like
Sell
you
me.
sell me
Yeah.
on it." And it's a conversation that needs to happen at the table between not the player character, but the character of the player and the
Yeah.
character of the GM.
Yeah.
And it makes us all engage in the same imaginary world
Hmm.
and the same uh, game world. There's a ludonarrative moment that happens there that I
Those are my
really like.
favorite. That's
Yeah,
that's my favorite part. I love that part. I love looking at my experiences and being like, huh, that's about complex systems of information. That might be appropriate for navigating a maze. Like
yeah,
to me, that's like really, really exciting.